Hey everybody, my name is Daniel, and today I'm inducting the Blob into the Halloween Hall of Fame. The Blob is an indestructible, carnivorous, gelatinous mass that comes from the only place where indestructible, carnivorous, gelatinous masses come from.
Powder in gravity space.
When a group of teenagers led by Steve, played by Steve McQueen, are the only ones who know of the Blob's existence and danger, it is up to them to warn the town and hopefully stop this thing from engulfing not only their sleepy Pennsylvania town, but the world. The Blob is what I think of when I think of 1950s Midwest America. I know I normally look at the 50s kind of like from that black and white TV look, but this one is in bright color. It pops from the costumes to the cars to the marquee to the Blob itself, this rich red and slightly pink and slightly purple. It's an interesting look because the black and white is obviously not how the world looked back then, but that's the way I perceive it. So this one, while being a more realistic look of the 50s, is also in a weird way kind of nostalgic and romantic with a capital R. For a goofy sci-fi lover, for a man who enjoys his campy B-movie fare, this movie is absolute perfection. I mean, right down to the song, you know immediately what this movie is. The composer, Ralph Carmichael, wrote an original theme that, over the credits, was supposed to sound like this. But instead, producer Jack Harris decided, no, that's a little too much. We're gonna hire Burt Bacharach to do this. Harris enlisted the legendary Burt Bacharach, Mac David, and Bernie Mead to become part of the Five Blobs, a group of studio musicians that not only wrote the song that you just heard, but songs like Saturday Night in Tijuana and From the Top of Your Guggle. Did I mention the Blob was a top 40 hit in America? For what it's worth, the director preferred Carmichael's version. The movie is helmed by the almighty god of cool, Steve McQueen, who apparently signed his deal for the movie while walking his dog in Central Park. He's just so full of life and energy and exuberance, and despite playing a teenager at 28 years of age, he's just got a physicality and an energy to him that really sells you on sort of the youthful spirit that he's got. But he's also got a great range. It depends on whether he's slyly tricking his friends or whether he's trying to romance his girlfriend Jane or whether he's really trying to convince the cops that he's not crazy and he really did see a monster. There's a little bit of innocence, there's a tenderness, there's a vulnerability, there's a moment where he's considering, like, am I really crazy? Did I see something? Or did I see a trick in the wind? You know, there's so much going on to his performance and he just sells it completely and wholly with aplomb. I love watching this guy on screen, and he's the classic example of a leading man. I also like the supporting cast, especially people like Annette Corso, who plays Jane, Robert Fields, who plays Tony, Earl Rowe, who plays the good lieutenant, Lieutenant Dave, and I especially love Jane's father, this waspy, frou-frou man, played by Albert John Smith. All of these people are either just camping it up and having a lot of fun, or they are giving some interesting dimension to this story. I especially loved Annette Corso's Jane because she's playing against that kind of teenage girl stereotype. She's just not there in the background to be a kind of token for the man. She also stands up to the cops and she's just as involved in trying to fight off this monster. I also love the tenderness she has when she's kind of comforting her brother or when she's comforting Steve. I also kind of like Tony, who's playing Steve's, I don't know if it's his best friend, but it's definitely one of those things where there could be a rivalry between those two, but you can tell Tony really respects Steve. And so whenever people are kind of not taking Steve seriously, Tony takes it upon himself to really firm up and get people to pay attention. And Tony's a great wingman. Steve McQueen was kind of, as Fields describes in the Criterion commentary, what? As he describes in that commentary, Steve McQueen was kind of like an older brother for him. And whenever the director would kind of get on Fields about a certain take, McQueen would take him aside and basically just say, look, F him. You're doing a good job. Just do the same thing you were doing, and I promise you, you'll be all right. And apparently it was. So you can kind of see that chemistry on screen, and that's what I really enjoy about the cast as a whole. There's a definite attitude to the Blob that it's made by people who just want to do the best that they possibly could with what they've got. You know, to make this movie work, you've got miniatures, you've got models, you've got hand-drawn animation, you've got a special table that apparently was 4 foot by 8 foot. They would put all the lights and the camera on top of it, and then they would put the Blob made out of this silicone mixture that you can still see today if you go to the right places. But they would take the table and they would start tilting it, and the camera would record the Blob moving due to gravity. And so what they would do is they would stitch a bunch of frames together of this, and it would give the Blob that weird, eerie look. It was just a ton of fun, and you can tell that these people had a ton of fun trying to make this movie. Originally, the director, whose name is Irvin S Yeaworth Jr. Yes, that's a mouthful. He originally was part of a Christian production company and doing a lot of those kinds of movies. And with The Blob, he kind of took it upon himself as a challenge to see, like, you know, can I, coming from this background, coming from this low-budget filmmaking, can I push myself to make a movie that would be released in theaters by somebody like Paramount? Could it be a hit? And to his eternal surprise, apparently it was. The thing with The Blob is it's not a scary movie. It's not gonna give you nightmares, but I think the reason why it fits Halloween with me is kind of in vain with something like Evil Dead 2, which I inducted last episode. This one's got a participatory element to it. You can tell that this movie was made with a big focus on the craft, on the techniques, that kind of reckless abandon that goes into this. I mean, even in the movie's most famous scene, this climax where they're running out of theater, you look at some of those extras and they're smiling. They're having a grand old time being part of this movie, and so that infectious energy ends up infecting me. And that's kind of why I think it fits that Halloween spirit. You know, you want to be part of the fun and the spooks, and I think The Blob fits just that. And it's not just me that thinks The Blob has the spirit of Halloween. For 20 years, the town of Phoenixville, Pennsylvania has come together during the summer for 3 days of celebrating The Blob. And they have reenactments of that famous running out scene where you see people running, you see people who worked on the movie, who have memorabilia from the movie show up and talk. You've got, like, car shows, and you've got bands, and you've got food, and there's just a big small town coming together to kind of celebrate their own little piece of movie history. It's one of the places I desperately want to go to just because I want to be part of that. I want to feel that energy. It's not the biggest director and it's not the biggest movie in the world, but somehow it came out the right time, it had the right actor, it had the right special effects and corniness and story, and apparently it's garnered this love over the years that has kind of built it, I think, beyond being a cult classic, and now has become a legitimate part of the American sci-fi B-movie movement. I mean, when Steve McQueen died, apparently the only poster hanging on his bedroom wall was the poster for The Blob. There's gotta be something special to that, and that's why The Blob makes it into my Halloween Hall of Fame. But that's my time. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to keep learning and talking about movies with me, go ahead and subscribe to the channel below. But right now, it is time for you to choose your own adventure between one of these two videos. On the left is my induction of Evil Dead 2 into the Halloween Hall of Fame, and on the right is my review for the movie Abominable, which I actually liked a lot. So, you've got a decision to make, choose your own adventure, and I'll see you next time.